Hi, welcome to Waylo's Workshop. I'm Waylo, and we're back with our B9 robot project. As you can see, we've gone ahead and primed him up. I've used some transparencies, different tints here to get a little bit of different color on some of the plastic bits, just so he doesn't look gray and metallic and clear. The Vallejo primer, of course, did a great job, went down real smooth, revealing all the detail. The stuff is self-leveling. I absolutely love it for working with models. I don't know how you guys handle these smaller pieces. I kind of like this method, just putting them up on toothpicks, putting them here on my little spray workstation, and spraying them up, just leaving them here to dry out, and then once they're dry, I can go ahead and do them. Again, this is a maroon tint that I've used. I will give you the names of all the products in the final roundup of this video series. But let's take a look at, we'll go through and begin our painting. So I'll show you what I do and how I do it. Here, let's take a look. Okay, what I'm using is Panzer Ace's dark rubber and a little bit of glazing medium from Vallejo. I use glazing medium instead of the water. I find it gives me it applies the paint smoother. It goes on real nice. I get a better finish with it, a better blending with it. I also find that it gives me it seems to give me a little bit more time to work with the paint. I don't know if it gives it a greater open time. Maybe it has a retarding property to it. I'm not sure. Obviously, I've sped up the film so you guys don't get bored and lose your minds with what you're seeing here. But basically what I'm doing is just trying to put down one good base coat of this color on all the areas of the robot's base. I'm also probably going to do his arms here, I think, in this clip. Just darkening everything up, laying down that good base coat. Now here what I'm doing is I'm changing brushes. I've gone to a smaller brush to work in those little bit tighter areas. I'm trying not to lay down so much, over painting the areas. I try to keep it neat and clean. You will see me put some of this dark rubber paint in some of the areas where I'm going to put down silver later, or actually it's going to be oily steel, I believe is the paint color I used. The reason I'm doing that is because if you undercoat it a darker color, you'll get a darker shade. So I'm trying to give it a little bit of difference in color there, even though it's a metallic paint. Then I'm going to go back in with a bit of chrome and touch that up as well. But here again, I'm just trying to keep it neat. Again, that glazing medium, it just flows off the brush. It's just absolutely beautiful to work with. Just trying to, I use these little opportunities like this to try to improve my brush skills. Seeing if I can apply the paint without actually going over the line, so to speak. And again, here, smaller pieces, smaller brush. These are the arms of the robot. I don't know if you remember these things, but in the TV show, they were like retractable vacuum cleaner tubes. I always thought of my mom's vacuum when I saw his arms come in and out. And again, you just want to make sure that as you're going through, you're laying down a good smooth base coat, that everything's coming up even. You're going to want to give that enough time to dry so you don't go back and brush again. The other thing I like about the glazing medium is I don't seem to get brush strokes. You can use synthetic brushes or natural hair brushes, but you use the glazing medium along with usually with the Vallejo paints. I have no problem with regards to brush strokes. And here's what I was talking about earlier. I'm going back and putting some of this dark rubber on the dark rubber paint on some of the places where I'm going to apply some metal. The reason being is I want to have hopefully get it to pop a little bit, give it some kind of, I don't know if you want to call it modulation between the metallics, but by painting that darker undercoat, a lot of times you get a better look to your metal or your metallics as you put them down. Okay, and what I'm doing here is, again, I'm going to go and now I'm going to put in that base coat. That's oily steel, and again, I'm using a glazing medium. And I use the glazing medium all the time with metallics because metallics tend to go down, and they're kind of funky to work with because of the way the metal flake is in them. A lot of them have actual metal flake in them, and what happens is it tends to show the brush strokes. So I try to, mix that up, give it like a 1-to-1 ratio at least. The other thing I'm doing that I don't know how much you're seeing of is what I'm doing is I'm dipping the brush in the water and then I'm unloading it onto a paper towel off to the side. So the brush is wet, it's just not dripping wet. I'm just moistening it enough so that when I begin to work with that glaze and that metallic, that I'm getting a nice smooth layering. I'm not using the water to thin it, I'm using the glazing medium to thin it, but I've got the brush wet. And again, with these metallics, it's just the same as the paint. I find that whether you put a dark undercoat or not, a lot of the times you have to go back and put a second coat on to get that true richness of that metallic shine to come through. So you'll probably see me go over this several times. The other thing I'm doing here as well is I'm trying to tap it and run lines in different directions to give it that sort of hammered metal feel. It doesn't really translate very well. I think you'd have to do it more by using different types of metal, but it's one of those kind of things you're playing with. You're always trying to figure out ways to create texture and apply texture to what you're doing. And here again, big brush, small brush. There's a lot of discussion a lot of times about working with metallics and having a completely different set of brushes. I don't do that. I find that if I clean them up real good with a little bit of Master's brush cleaner, I have no problem with metal flake appearing on other things that I paint. I've never had that problem, so I really don't have those issues. Changing your water does help, however. And again, you could see why I chose to add the color to the chest piece and I don't know if it's his brain you'd want to call it, but in his head assembly, I gave it a bit of blue tint there, because basically everything is nothing but a rubberized coloring and metallic, so it makes for a pretty, almost boring looking robot. So by adding a bit of color to it, you're going to give it something's going to pop there. It'll give it, you look at it, you'll get people's attention with it. Okay, and again, we're coming back in, and again, I'm going to go and put a second coat on. Now, you put that first layer down, you give it a good chance to dry, and then you take a look and see, you're not going to get a lot of times the depth of coverage or the dark coverage that you want the first time you apply it. That's one of the good advantages, however, of working with acrylic paints. If you don't work with acrylics, you can give it color modulation They're calling it zenith lighting, they're calling it. But basically what it is it gives you an opportunity to blend from light to dark. You can create shadow areas by putting, if you have darker or lower areas, you could just simply put a second coat on and leave the first coat on the higher points, and it gives you a sense of light and dark without even having to add other colors into the paint mix to blend it. To blend it and give it those highlight and low light tones. So you can simply shade by simply adding a second coat to certain areas and leaving others untouched. A lot of people do it as a form of pre-shading, where they'll darken the deeper recesses first, and you see that a lot with the guys doing model aircrafts out there. They'll do panel lines and then come back in and lay down their base coat of color, and so those panel lines pop through. Here I'm trying to just do the treads, and again, the way I operate, as you can see there, I'm not using Winsor and Newton brushes for everything that I do. You got a lot of guys out there saying go ahead and do this. If I'm getting the same effect, if I'm getting this, the paint's going down nice and smooth with the brush I'm using the brush I've got. Okay, so I've done about as much as I'm going to do for this episode. I think we've gone on here long enough. So thanks for watching, and until next time, don't forget to